Donald Trump's so-called Liberation Day is here. The US president rolling out sweeping tariffs on dozens of countries, including Australia. Tonight, the world is reeling from the biggest upheaval to international trade since World War II.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed.
A national economic emergency. That's why Donald Trump says he's slapping US trading partners with a 10% baseline tariff.
It's going to be Liberation Day in America. Hopefully you're going to look back in years to come and you're going to say, you know, he was right.
Trump is calling them reciprocal tariffs, retaliating against other countries' policies that he says have disadvantaged US producers, now hitting them with taxes to level the playing field.
A reciprocal tariff would be zero, not 10%.
Australia among those subjected to the 10% tax, which is set to have a significant impact on our top export to the US, beef. Trump taking a dig at our ban on American beef products since the mad cow outbreak in 2003.
We imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone. They won't take any of our beef because they don't want it to affect their farmers. And you know what? I don't blame them, but we're doing the same thing right now, starting about midnight tonight, I would say.
All Aussie exports will be hit with the 10% tariff, with a few exemptions, including pharmaceuticals, timber and critical minerals. But other countries have copped it far worse. The EU being whacked with 20% reciprocal tariffs. China said to be taxed at 34% and Vietnam near the top of the list at almost 50%. World leaders today reacting with outrage.
I strongly believe that tariffs benefit no one. They're bad for the world economy. They hurt people.
We disagree with that agenda. We don't think that is good for global trade, and that's why we're opening up as much trade with as many different countries as we possibly can.
We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us.
Well, Republican Congressman Marlin Stutzman is both a lawmaker and an Indiana cattle farmer. I spoke to him earlier. Marlin Stutzman, thanks so much for joining us. It's a big day. Our PM says this is not the act of a friend. Is he right?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that we are friends and that we need to build our friendship. And, you know, the tariffs regarding beef with Australia really stems back to the mad cow disease problem that the United States had back in the early 2000s. But we believe it's 20 years now since that ban was put in place and that ban could be lifted. And so, of course, President Trump has made this a central part of his agenda to level the playing field for America. There's a lot of tariffs from countries all around the world that we deal with on a daily basis, and we have a great partnership. But we want to level the playing field with all of our friends and allies and make sure that it's a good partnership for both sides.
So just back on the issue of mad cow disease, though, for a second. The most recent case in the US was in 2023. That's pretty recent. Can you understand why the ban would remain in place under those circumstances?
Well, that's, I guess, new information to me. I'll definitely check that out. But, you know, we feed over 350 million people in America, and we feed, people in other parts of the world as well. And we obviously have greater concern than, anybody even in Australia would have about mad cow disease here in the United States. And so, you know, we've got great institutions that make sure that our food safety is the best in the world. And at the end of the day, if the ban is dropped and there's protocols in place that the American farmer can, sell to Australia as well as America can buy from Australia, that's a real relationship.
Sorry, so are you saying then that if Australia dropped its restrictions on American beef, all the biosecurity regulations, so on, the tariffs across the board would disappear? President Trump, I don't want to speak for him, specifically, but that was his comments today that, the tariff related to beef from Australia was because there was a ban on American beef to Australia. And I think it is really that simple. All right. Well, history tells us that American consumers will pay for this. When you look at past examples, tariffs are the reason, for example, that Americans pay twice as much for sugar
as most of the rest of the world. The reason they pay a huge amount for German pickup trucks. There was an issue with baby formula where tariffs on baby formula meant that there was a problem with American supply, and then Americans had a problem trying to get formula and the prices were really high. This is not an encouraging track record.
I really think this is putting us on a track to a more free trade and a fair trade policy with all of our allies. Whoever has competitive advantages, they will, they should be allowed to trade rather than having protectionist policies in place. So this is a reset. So he's not asking too much. I really truly believe that his ultimate goal is not to have any tariffs going either direction.
So you've said all these other countries are putting unfair tariffs on America. One example of that the Trump administration uses is Australia's goods and services tax of 10%. But that's not a tariff because domestic producers are hit with it just as much as foreign producers. So when the administration says they're being charged tariffs, do they actually understand what a tariff is?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is a tax.
Yeah. Tariff
a
tariff is a tax, but it's a tax only on foreign goods, on imports. And a goods and services tax is a tax on services right across the board, on every producer, including domestic ones. That's the opposite of a tariff.
No, somebody's going to pay the tax, and there has to be a level. Again, I'm going back to fair trade policy. We've talked a lot about free trade, but when China or when Australia or when Mexico or Canada, if there's a tariff on the United States for goods that leave the United States to those particular country, is that fair trade policy if the United States doesn't have the same tariff in return? Yeah,
but what I'm saying is it's not a tariff because American producers are not put at a disadvantage by paying a goods and services tax because Australian producers have to pay the same thing. So I guess what I'm asking is why is that being cited as a tariff against America and then a reason for retaliation?
Well, I guess I'm not sure exactly the question, but I would say that, we all have our own tax policies within our own countries, and we can always adjust accordingly if there's tariffs. But again, these are conversation starters. And I mean, this has brought people to the table like we've never seen before.
Well, it definitely has started conversations, and it's been wonderful to be able to have a conversation with you, Congressman Stutzman. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Obviously, the percentages have been revealed of the tariff, so that's a definite thing. But I am curious as to when the American people are going to see the benefits of this, because in the immediate future, prices will be higher for them if they continue to buy the goods from overseas that they have.
Yeah.
So when does it get better for them?
There are a million different answers to that, I guess, because it would depend on the industry. So there'll be some where American producers can ramp up their supply, and then that'll happen fairly quickly.
But that will take some time.
Yeah, but so say cattle, how long does it take you to develop big enough herds to supply all the beef that Americans want? I don't know. I'm not a cattle farmer, but I can't imagine it's a week, right? That's probably years. But if you're talking about other things where it's car manufacturing and you've got people who then have to move all their operations into America if they want to avoid that, that's definitely years.
Yeah.
So it'll be patchwork. There'll be some who win out of this, I don't doubt that. And then there'll be some who lose big. And part of the concern with this is it's so blanket. And when you do that, the consequences are unpredictable. But history says very rarely good in the main, even if there are pockets of winners. We'll see how permanent it is, though, because your point about negotiation is a fair one.
We'll wait and see.